join in. And today, for our second one, we have Jimena Panduro, who is the senior manager of social media for Inter Miami and used to run social for the US women's national team. Hey, Jimena.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm okay, hanging in there, I think, like everyone.
Yeah. I guess to start, would love just for everyone to get a little bit of background of your kind of career path and your, how interesting and diverse your background is and what led you to Inter Miami.
Yeah, so I went to school at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And so kind of got involved in sports there. I started volunteering at the ops department and then eventually found my way to comms, communications. I think back then, we're talking 2010, 2011 is when the creative departments were really starting to get ingrained some ground. So for me, it was a lot of PR at the beginning and, kind of dealing with social media here and there. I met and became really close, like built relationships with a lot of the SIDs. So they were giving me kind of control over social and they allowed me to write things and, kind of play around with Photoshop or InDesign. That's kind of where I was first exposed to it really. So I was at Florida doing all that for about, I think, 3 years. And then after that, I got an internship at USA Basketball. So immediately I was done with school. I had walked and then I had a semester of kind of like a senior project. And I talked to my advisor and that half of that senior project was working in the comms department. And then the other half was I was going to have this internship at USA Basketball. So I moved to Colorado for that. Did that for about 5 months. It was amazing, mostly in the sense that I met really great people. I was exposed in a really direct way to dealing with athletes on a regular basis. I mean, they were high school kids, but these were kids that in a year after that were all or like half of them were in the NBA. So, they were kind of big time athletes in a way. Dealt with them a lot. We had a lot of camps and competitions and kind of was introduced to the national governing body system. So when that internship was over, I applied to US Soccer and, started as an intern, a lot of communications again, some social, and then eventually I transitioned into the US Women's National Team role which began right after winning the World Cup in 2015. So I had been an intern up to that point for about a year. I worked the Canada World Cup back in Chicago. And then when the women started going on the parade in New York and their victory tour, that's when I joined them. So one of my first things with them was a parade, which is wild, but I did that with them and then, was with them ever since, went through them all the way until Olympic qualifying this year. Of course, there's no Olympics, but Olympic qualifying this year. And then that's when I moved to Miami, which, for me was very exciting to get to build kind of something from the ground up and be in this club that is trying to do something very different and unique that reflects the city of Miami itself, which is also very different and unique. So That's kind of been the journey for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think really interesting too, how you kind of went from the PR side to the social side, which is, in some ways a natural transition in that social media now really is like the PR kind of wall for a team. And I think some organizations understand that and others don't in a way. But it really is, when something happens on a PR front, it really is the social team's responsibility to kind of get ahead of that, or at least be, the one who's actually interacting with the fans who, may, need to hear about that. So would love to hear a little bit about your time at US Soccer. And, one of the things that's interesting is you had the 2016 Olympics shortly after you started, and then the 2019 World Cup, which were probably the two biggest kind of events you covered there. Like, how did you see social and that organization change from the Olympics to the World Cup as it evolved naturally, like over those 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the change was huge. My role kind of changed too. I started, for me, I gained more and more kind of responsibility and ownership of that team and those channels and everything relating to digital with the women's team as the years went by. So in 16, I was, I did older social and older content for 4+ years. And so in 16, when we did it, we kind of had a a clear idea of what we wanted to do. We needed to play around with, the International Olympic Committee has a lot of restrictions for rights and, what you can show, and we don't get highlights. And there's all these different kind of rules. So playing around with all that is very interesting. But I think we had the clear idea of, they just won the World Cup. They want to do something they've never done before, which is win the back-to-back World Cup and Olympics. Lean a lot on showcasing their personalities. But I think for me, going from 16 to 19, that gave me 3 years of really meeting them and building relationship and interacting with them more. And so 19 I was so confident in the way of, I know what we're gonna do here, because I knew who they were. I knew the things that they liked, that they didn't like. I knew I had been at trainings with them for 3 years at that point. And so I had seen what they've been through. I knew I was I was at the stadium in the press box when we, didn't go through for the quarterfinals for the Olympics, which was like the biggest failure for them because that had never happened before. And so, that build up, I think it built us all together to what the goal for 19 would be. And so, from 16 to 19, social grew so much in the way of how it operates. Like, content is now just quality. It's amazing how far it's come, and videography, and the meme game in fact has grown, and there's all this collaboration and competition too at the same time in the social sphere between so many teams. But I think fortunately for the women, because of who they are and because of the brand they built themselves, I didn't really build it. I helped, but it's a brand they own very, very well. They also were a step ahead of every other national team, and so that helps them. And then they're successful on the team, and so 19 was interesting. It was very interesting because social grew. It was interesting because as social media keeps growing and sports keeps growing, there's so many outside factors that merge and interact. It's not just sports. There's sports and culture and politics and entertainment, and there's all these different people that are paying attention and watching and have an opinion. And so that was a big change too. And being a national team is interesting because you don't get a city behind you, you get a country behind you, which is a nice different approach. For me, it's very different now being here in Miami, obviously. So it's been a big change for them, and I think social changes every single day. So I think we all learn as we go.
And you talked about having that time in between the Olympics in 2016 and the 2019 World Cup to build that relationship with the athletes and on the team, and that really kind of set you up for success in 2019. Did you find it intimidating when you first started at US Soccer to interact with the players, and how did you kind of start to get comfortable? Is it part of the institution there that you're around them enough, or did you really kind of take it upon yourself to make those interactions and try to form a better relationship with the players?
Yeah. I think the very first time I met any of them was media day for the World Cup in 15. We all got paired up with a player, and funny enough, I got paired up with Megan Rapinoe. And so she was like one of the first players I met. And you kind of meet them and you just talk and you're like, hi, this is my name, so and so. And after that, it was my first kind of big camp was I think in August of 15. And Pina remembered my name and Carly remembered my name, but I don't really know anybody else at that point. And so it's always strange trying to navigate that. I don't think being scared is a word, but it's more of perhaps being careful. Like you don't want to seem like you're overstepping, or you don't want to seem like you're like very naive. It's a very strange kind of situation. I think part of it is they are a very close, tight-knit group, but it does require a little bit of work and effort to get to know them. I wouldn't say it's just they opened their arms immediately and were like, come into the family. They did that for sure, but for me it was a lot of either whether it was sitting next to them on the bus or just being near, like if we walked by each other at the hotel or in the game, or I would take a video and they would ask for it, or it's just building a relationship and a trust that I know what I'm doing. If you need something, I will give it to you. I'm never going to put you in a bad spot. If you don't like something, let me know. It's totally fine. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. It's a lot of, and this is where it can get tough because, so many athletes are just so big in general. And so you're kind of, how do I do this? But at the same time, they're just people, they're big. Yeah, sure. They're big people and they have this amount of agents and, publicists and people around, but really, you might both be watching the same show and that's something you get to talk
Yeah.
about. And no one's saying you're friends. I think that's a lot of people in the social and digital industry do know that very well. Like there's a difference between building a relationship and having trust with your athletes and being best friends. Like it's,
Right.
I wouldn't say it's tough. You're not best friends like you're with your best friends. You're good acquaintances and you have a good relationship and they know what you do and you know what they do. And like I told you, I've seen them work so hard, and so when they win, it's just you know what they've been through, and that's just amazing. So I think I did work a little for it, and eventually it got more and more comfortable. And I think once they hit it off, once they realize, oh, she can be funny, or oh, she knows
Hmm.
what she's doing, then it kind of flows from there really easily.
Right. And you're not always asking them for something. That's like sometimes you're giving them content. Sometimes it's just
Hmm.
introducing yourself. It's not always about like, hey, could you record this selfie video for me or do, this piece that we want you to do.
Right. I mean, I did ask for a lot of things. They would tell you that if you ever ask them, but I
Right.
think there was that level of trust where I could be like, "Hey, Sam, so can I get this selfie video, whatever?" And sometimes it would be like, "Oh, I don't really want to, Jim, or whatever," or they'd be like, "Oh, I'm just doing it because you're asking," and because it was like, they like you, and they're like, "All right, I'll do it."
Yeah.
Sometimes they would just be like, "No, I really don't want to," and so I'd be like, "No problem. We don't. There's no issue whatsoever." I think that's another big thing is trying to measure really what's important and what you really need. And it's like, do I really need that selfie video? Do I really need to make that ask? If I don't, then don't do it. If you know they're going to say no, or if it's not necessary, because then later on you might need something way more important that you do need them to do. So it's funny because, digital content, social, PR are all separate, yet they all interact so much in different ways that I think that's why so many organizations, have those three kind of departments working closely together sometimes, because we all rely on each other for asks and relationships and, player participation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually a good question from Dom that's related to exactly what you're talking about now. Dom, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so thank you. So I'm Dom. I'm actually over in the UK at the minute. I work with basketball in Scotland and with Great Britain. Last summer, I was kind of thrown in the deep end, and I ended up at European Championships with the senior GB women's team. And one of the things I found difficult was obviously the priority of the team there is to win at the tournament. It is not comms. And within their schedule of meal times, physio sessions, training sessions, I kind of find it difficult to get the time to get what I wanted. And it's always a case of I would have liked to have done more. So I guess the question is, when you were in a competition environment, how did you sort of balance the time that they needed to do what they were there to do, but also find the time to do what you needed to do with the players?
Yeah, that's a great question because we've definitely gone through a little bit of that. So, for example, during the World Cup, we before the competition started, we were in England. We were training at the Spurs training facility, and we got shut down a bit. We were told, we're going to avoid cameras. We're going to avoid this. They just want to train for the 7-10 days we're here. And the thing is, we hadn't really been told in advance that that was going to be the case. And we had plans to make. We had plans, and we weren't, we had all these videos organized. And so we had to kind of adjust in a way at that point. And so a lot of that went back to and relied on pre-prepared content. Like, what did we have already that we could push and use during that time? And so you said you got kind of thrown into that situation. So perhaps it's a bit different. But for us, it was, all right, we have this video series that we produce is 23 videos, right? So that helped us fill in the time. And we had this WNT dictionary thing we did, which was kind of like player sayings and their inside jokes. So we pushed that out. And so we had 10 days to fill in content without really doing much with the players. Because I had been around them for such a long time, I have videos and photos on my phone that I would play around with, or, we could build the excitement of the World Cup, of the tournament, through the tournament's accounts or through the situation, or, asking the fans, like, what are you doing? Or will we see you in France? Or, what are your summer plans? Where are you going to be watching the game? It became more about what we already had and what the fans in the US were doing that in our players. And in a weird way, I think it ended up working out okay, which wasn't ideal, but it worked out, and no one really noticed too much that, oh, they're, they don't have anything. It was more of, look at all these cool things they're doing. And in 23 Stories, it's so well, obviously, that people really enjoyed it and forgot about everything else. But I think when we're in the middle of camps and during the World Cup, it's, again, it's a lot of it is prioritizing what's really important. Like we would ask, as I would lead the content team in camp, so I would ask our coaches or our PR guy or our fitness people, what's the schedule tomorrow? Like, can we have as much detail as possible? Oh, they're going to be, they have cool down from 10, they have recovery from 10 to 12, lunch is at 1:30, and then they have a meeting at 3. So a schedule like that is tight. It's like, where do I do things? And so it's kind of, for me, it was, okay, they have recovery starting at 10. Which player wakes up early? A lot of times it was like that. It was like, which player wakes up early? So-and-so wakes up early. Okay, so maybe I can get that player at 9:30, right before recovery, because we usually get them for, we need them for 15 minutes. That's all we need from them for a sit-down interview or anything else. So we'll get them at 9:30, and then I would, reach out to the player and ask her, hey, are you available to do this at 9:30 real quick? You'll be done with plenty of time for recovery, no worries. And usually the player would be like, sure, no problem, and so that's how we would get them. Or if they would be done at, lunch was at 1:30, we usually gave them about an hour for lunch at 2:30, 3. So like at 3 or 3:30, we were like, hey, can we grab you for 10 minutes? And a lot of times that meant we didn't need to get lunch or, we had to figure out what to do later. But it was, how do we fit it in the schedule to make it work with the player? And we know how busy they are, and we know they have training and recovery and they need to eat and sleep, whatever. But it's kind of, the coaches, it's trying to get the coaches and the players and everybody really to understand that what we're doing matters and it has a purpose. It's not just, we're not just asking for fun. And then it's also the balancing of, is it really crucial for me to be asking this right now? If I can get away with not asking, then I won't. So I don't know if that fully helps, but I think that I understand that the tight schedule situation, I've been on that multiple times, and a lot of it is tough, and it's pre-planning as much as possible, even though I know the coaches and players will throw curveballs at you and be like, never mind, we changed this meeting and now it's not at 5, it's at 6, and you were already planning for something at 6. So it's a lot of adjusting on the fly in any way you can, which can be tough, but it's doable a lot of times. So yeah.
Great. We actually have a question from Lauren Reed, who is on the social team at Tennessee Athletics. I think she's having some audio issues, so I could read it for you here. What has your experience been in helping build the personal brands of players while also maintaining the team's brand as a social manager? Any tips and tricks to doing both simultaneously?
I think for the women's team, not all of them, but several of them, they have their own brand pretty established, right? And so that is almost an unfair advantage compared to many other teams in which the players are perhaps not as big. And so where the question of building their brand kind of comes in. But we did have a couple of younger players or newer players. And, Rose Lavelle was relatively unknown and still is for so many people, even though she's, she scored that goal during the World Cup final. But I think a lot of it goes back to getting to know who they are, right? A brand is built and exists based on who is this person. Like what, we joke around, we say, oh, that's my brand. What does that mean? That means this is something I enjoy, this is something I do, this is something I consume. And so a player's brand is who they are, and the word authentic gets thrown around a lot, but it's true in a way of, Rose, for example, her brand is she loves dogs and she's really funny and she is kind of silly in a weird way and she's a little strange and she loves Cincinnati, Ohio. That's her brand. That really is. And so once you know those things, when things about Rose happen, you get to play around with it a little, right? You're like the jewel of the crown city, of the queen city, or you go and there's a dog at the hotel, then you're doing something with her and dogs. And so it's getting to know who these players are, what they like, what they enjoy, what they're good at, what, makes them what's gonna make them relatable to people beyond the good soccer player, and or beyond the good athlete for whatever sport they are. So I think helping them was getting to know them and then lean on that. So lean on quote unquote their brand to keep promoting them and get people to know who they are, as people. And then that helped. It was the brand of these 23 athletes or however many players we had that made up the brand of the women's national team and still does. It's all of them individually make up what this team is and why so many people like it.
Absolutely. There's a few questions here that are similar. Simra, did you want to ask your question about players during this time? Aaron Hodges, do you want to ask your similar question?
Oh, sorry, Simmer. We couldn't hear you when you were talking.
She was talking.
Yeah, we can't pick up on your audio.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't seem like your audio is working there. I could read it out loud. So the question is, how do you coordinate your time with players and coaches on social content while being in quarantine? Are you working through your player development and PR teams first, or are you reaching out directly to players? And I know for you, there's a wrinkle to that. You're trying to build relationships with new players you just started a few months ago. So how does that factor into kind of what you're trying to do now?
Yeah, so I met our players 3 times. That's the amount of times I met our players before we got shut down, because they're in our training facilities and we're in our offices, and they were in separate areas. So I was able to go on 1 road trip with them for our second game, which we only play 2, so our second game. So at least they know my face and my name, which was really helpful. However, because of everything that's happened, we have a really great PR team that is, leading the way and leading the charge here and trying to help us communicate with them. And, credit to our players in every way. They've been incredibly helpful and responsive and willing to do things, for us and with us. And, I think everybody's in the same situation of trying to figure out, no one knows what's happening, what we're doing. Everybody's a little bored, especially the players. And so they've been really great. We're doing more and more. We're doing these Q&As recently, which means I get to kind of, talk to them a bit more alongside our PR guys. So it's a strange one, for me, especially because I just haven't had the time and haven't had the interaction, and you don't build relationships unless you're, almost constantly around them, or, just seeing them, or they've got to at least see your face. That's how athletes get comfortable so they comfortable with people, because they see them all the time. So, for me, it has been different. I don't have the ability perhaps that I had with the women's, in which I could just text them or call them right away and get something. I have to go through people, but credit to everybody involved in our team at Miami. Everybody's been really helpful and willing to do things. So it hasn't been a problem. It's just been different. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure kind of the pause to this season must have been really hard for you, especially in your club, and how much, leading into your first home game, how excited everyone was for that. So yeah, apologies that happened to you and all the work that you guys put into that. I feel like it's even more like acutely felt probably for you guys there. Do you feel like, the organization has really kind of come together? What's kind of the mood been like? I can't imagine how it must have turned from prepping to launch a new team, a brand new brand, to now kind of adjusting to this new reality.
It was a huge halt for everybody. I think everybody has definitely come together. I think everybody's very sad too, more than anything, because there's been, again, I've been around for almost 3 months, but so many of these people have been here for at least a year, 2 years more. And so they've really been building towards this, and, it got stopped. And so everybody understands this is so much bigger, and there's, bigger issues and problems to deal with right now. And everybody's focused on that and hoping for things to get resolved in a positive way. But it's been hard. I mean, the main thing with us is because we're brand new, we play 2 games. So we don't have, archives. We don't have records. We don't have old games to rely on. We don't have historic moments. We don't have anything. And so everything we've had to do has been entirely like zero, like from the bottom, like completely creative, like anything and everything has tried to be pull as much as we have. I mean, we have one goal. So it hasn't been easy, you know, from every side really. And so we've managed it really well, and we've produced a lot of content, which is incredible. You know, and we have a lot of content still to push. So it's just been not what everybody was hoping for and expecting at this point in the year, but it is what we got, you know, thrown at, what everybody's got thrown at. And I think everybody's been doing similar things. I think anybody that runs, you know, any sort of social or content or digital will tell you that the ideas are basically a lot of recycle ideas amongst everybody, and that's not a bad thing. It's just it's what we've got. But it's for us, it feels extra difficult. At least I feel that way a lot, because we don't have, you know, old photos to go through.
Yeah.
We don't have old videos to go through. We don't have historic moments or stats to play with. We have really nothing. And so it's just it's a unique kind of situation.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I didn't even think about kind of the well of content that other organizations have that you guys don't, and have to get even more creative as to how to fill this time. We have a question from Emma, who is a student, and I know there's a handful of students on, so it could be good for the group here. Emma, did you want to unmute and ask your question, introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a junior at Ithaca College, but I also play on the women's soccer team. And I've been wanting to pursue a social media or on-air kind of jobs post-college, and was hoping this summer to get an internship with something or somewhere, and a lot of those were canceled. So I was wondering kind of your advice with that halt and with that kind of stop in internships and opportunities going into like our senior year or post-grad, what you say we could do to kind of make ourselves stand out from the crowd a bit and get our foot in the door at those bigger organizations.
Hi. It has been tough with the whole job search situation. I have, you know, a lot of other interns that I've known that have either, you know, lost their jobs or can't find anything. So it's kind of almost hard to know what's going to happen. I do think though that, you know, hopefully in a few months, when things kind of start in a weird way sort of returning to normal, these jobs will exist. You know, even though some jobs have been furloughed or laid off, they're going to be needed again. I think a lot of people are just trying to save money at the moment and, you know, kind of organize and try to figure out what to do. But I'm sure you can see it now more than anything. Social and content and digital is perhaps one of the few departments that can almost function entirely normal in a weird way. And so, you know, so many departments have been halted and can't do much, but we can still work. We can still do what we're doing. We can still work. So everybody's going online to try to talk to each other and see each other and joke with each other is the only way we kind of stay sane. So I think a lot of it is, you know, keep talking to people, kind of, you know, update your resume if you have one, and you know, kind of pay attention to what's happening, to what people are doing. I think right now what's going on is actually a good learning experience for so many, because no one has a plan for this. Everybody's kind of had to figure it out as we go. So, you know, keep an eye out. And I know, for example, you know, we're hoping to expand at some point. Obviously, right now it's a stop, but you know, it's going to happen. And I think for so many other places, it's probably the similar situation. It's just kind of a lot of question marks, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough time for that. But, you know, I would imagine there could be some more internship opportunities still to open up, you know, within the coming months, and have heard from a lot of teams that, like you said, Jimena, that, you know, digital and social is actually getting asked for stuff more than ever, and people on digital and social staffs are actually busier than they've ever been, and frankly the numbers have been for a lot of teams as good as they've ever been, even without sports. So, you know, as these business owners look to where their value is, they're only going to start investing more in digital and social. It just might be kind of a little bit of a hiatus during this time. So I know we're 3 minutes, and do you have time for just a few more questions coming in from the crowd here, and then we'll cut it at 5:40 Eastern?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. I think AZ had a question specific to your presence in Miami and kind of what you're doing to build a brand there. AZ, did you want to introduce yourself? And
Sure, yeah. Hi. I mean, well, first, welcome to Major League Soccer. I know a lot of Union people are down there with you. So just a quick question. How are you building a digital presence around Miami during this inaugural season? Like, I know aside from what we're at right now, but like kind of what are your plans in terms of building that social presence around Miami?
Yeah, I think the plan right before all this kind of happened was to try. For me, it was to kind of create this almost like cool, unique, different club, and a lot of that was because how unique Miami is. Miami is a city that, unless you kind of lived here or really been exposed to it, you won't get it. It's very strange and weird. And, there's all these different cultures, and Spanish is a big part of it. And, there's music, and there's a beach, and there's just celebrity. It's so different. People try to make it similar to LA, but it isn't. It's very different. So for us, a lot of it was, Miami is kind of one of a kind. So are we, or at least that's what we want to be. And our players are in our coaching staff and in our group, everybody, they're from all over the world. And so that was a big element. It was like we're this multicultural kind of brand, very different perhaps than other MLS teams or any other team really. And so it was leaning onto that. How are we? We're cool, we're different, we're unique, we're global. We have all these different countries that we kind of deal with. For me personally, it was getting to meet these guys and kind of presenting them to the world and see what they like and what they don't like. I mean, there were a handful that I knew from obviously my time at national teams and mostly, the guys that had played for the U.S. national team. So I knew that, but for me, it was also a lot of unknowns. I didn't really know most of these guys at a personal level, or, I hadn't really been paying attention to their youth careers in international countries. So it was how do I get to know them? How do we position our cool, different brand, our multicultural kind of, lens to the world? And obviously with all this changing is a lot of, still trying to do a little bit of that, but also just, kind of share with the world, like, hey, we're all in the same situation. We're, here, we're still trying to introduce our guys. We have these videos that we're doing kind of like profile pieces of them. And, we're doing a lot of written features. Like we get our PR guys are great and talk to them. And it's like, what are you doing? And, we put this video of Lee Wynn doing coffee because he loves making coffee, like legit, he has an espresso machine. And so, we did a written feature with him too. So it's kind of still trying to present our guys and, make them human. And because it's all the athletes, that's what they are. They're all humans that are going through the same things and have their passions. And, things have changed so radically for us that it's just adjusting every day. But I think the multicultural elements and the unique and cool and refreshing kind of, we're kind of a bit different than perhaps other teams is definitely a big part of what we were going for and still trying to go for, of course.
Cool. We will just do 2 more questions here. And I think going forward, we'll make these 45 minutes because this is the second one to go over. And it seems like people are engaged, which is great. And we don't want to necessarily cut it off, but do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Hannah, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for finding time to talk to us newbies. It's just like really exciting to be able to, I guess, kind of meet everybody. But yeah, my question was going out, and you've had obviously such an incredible career. Like, what are some things that really have set you apart so you can attain these roles?
Ooh, good question. That is a good question. I think for me, I'm trying to think how I got that job at US Soccer, for example. I think it's a lot of owning who you are, right, and owning what you're doing. And I was very fortunate to be with the women's team for a long time, and that I really as I told Eric earlier on, I became really confident with what I was doing there, and I think that helps because a lot of this social and digital world is, I don't think any of us, nobody is an expert. This job in this world changes every day, so we're all learning as we go. But you have to almost feel comfortable in what you're doing, owning it, and if you believe in an approach and this works for your brand, then go for that and work with that. And not every brand is going to be different, not every team is going to be the same, the same. So on the women's team, our voice was very clear. I knew exactly who they were. I knew exactly who we were. I was able to answer people and do these different kind of content pieces and projects and lean on this, lean on that. And during the World Cup, we got hit with so many different angles for criticism, and I knew who our players were, I knew who our team was. We were never anybody that's going to attack back or retaliate in any way, but we kind of, we push forward and we win. And that's basically what they did. So I think just like, you got to own it. You got to feel comfortable with it. I think that for sure coming to Miami, when I was talking to my now coworker before the job, it was a lot of, I know what we want to do here. He would explain their vision, and I was like, that's what I want to do too. And, I want to build something from the ground. And I'm from Miami. So for me, it was a easy transition, kind of going back and kind of, I understand this city and I know what we want to do, and its people and its players, and, it's going to be really cool. And all that has kind of been thrown out for the moment. Hopefully it'll be back. But I think just that you're gotta, whatever job you land on, really get to a place where you're so comfortable with it that you're just, what this is what we do, and you own it, and where you want to take it and where the organization is going. And that really is going to help you feel more comfortable in what you're doing and kind of, find whatever is next, whether that's building something or continuing something. But once you kind of believe in yourself in that way and what you're doing, it's just going to help for everything else.
Yeah, that's great advice. And keep doing what you're doing, as many conversations and learning ahead of time as possible and interacting with people. I got my job at the NFL just from an informational conversation with someone in college that didn't turn into anything for, about 9 months plus, and then ended up being like an internship that ended up kind of launching my career. So, the more you're doing stuff like this, the better. So the last question we'll have here is from Aaron. Aaron, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys. Thanks for taking my question. Definitely excited. I guess I was just wondering, just given the fact that you kind of alluded to, you don't have like a lot of extra content to work with or a lot of game content, where are you kind of like grabbing your inspiration for player content from, whether it be from like other teams or even just like outside of the sports industry? Do you have any places of inspiration for your content right now? A lot of stuff seems so rinse and repeat in the industry. So where are you trying to get creative?
Hi, Aaron. I think fortunately, we at least have a little bit we did our car wash, our media day before the season started. So a lot of what we've been, pulling and kind of playing around with has been that. But I think for us is, we're trying to see not only what sports teams are doing, but almost what people want and need, right? And I think right now, a lot of people are looking for some sort of, outlet and entertainment and something they can just kind of take their mind off. We were talking before the call, you turn on the TV, you open any website, and it's all about what's happening. So sports and, entertainment, we're kind of the outlet and the go-to for those things. So I'm trying to at least pay attention to what people are asking for, what they're doing. All these different teams are approaching stuff in different ways, which is very fascinating. We still have sponsorship responsibilities, and we still have, plans from, the business development groups. And so we're trying to balance our responsibilities and our things that we have to do with, what kind of content can we come up with? And some of it is on the fly. Some of it is just, oh, this is happening tomorrow. It seems like something good. Let's see if we could do something. Other things is just, I think we recently had, so MLS is celebrating 25 years, and it was like last week. And so we obviously were not part of the original 25. We're, one of the last clubs to join. So we recreated this kind of, FIFA 96, like what if, and that did really well. And that's just kind of something that our content team, brainstormed a little too of, what if we had been playing there? Maybe that would have been cool. So I think it's just, we're looking at what sports teams are doing, what people want, what the topic of conversation is. Some things don't fit, and we won't push it if they don't. It doesn't. I think for us too is we're still, because we're such a new club, we're still trying to find our voice, and that probably has been one of the toughest things. And I think that was going to be a big point of focus for us when the season started, right? Finding that voice and that kind of relationship. And because we haven't had time, our voice, for me, we're still trying as a whole to figure it out. And so that has been a bit of an issue, in the sense of perhaps we can't run away with everything that, I would have done with other teams, or we would be doing at this point if everything had been kind of normal. So kind of getting inspiration from everywhere we can, to be honest. So that's just kind of how it's working at this point.